I'm Nick Forster. You're listening to eTown. I mentioned that Tommy Caldwell is here. He's a famous rock climber. He grew up in Colorado. His parents were both mountain guides and climbers. His dad was a bodybuilder, and he took him into the wilderness when he was really little, like 2 years old, in a snow cave. He became a climbing sensation as a teenager. He was famously kidnapped with 3 other climbers in 2000 when he was in Kyrgyzstan, held hostage for 6 days. He escaped after Tommy pushed his captor off a cliff. Crazy, crazy stuff. He went on to become what National Geographic described as arguably the best all-around rock climber on the planet, despite cutting off half of his index finger in a table saw accident. I mean, there's some drama here, folks. There's some drama. The Dawn Wall free climb really cemented his reputation. He now travels and speaks to different groups. He lobbies in Washington. He still rock climbs, of course, with his friends and family. Please welcome to eTown from Estes Park, Colorado, Tommy Caldwell. Welcome, Tommy. I know that's just like the tiny little synopsis of your story, but I had to get some stuff in there.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Man, thank you for the invitation tonight. Any chance to be on stage with musicians is something just brings a coolness vibe to my life that you don't normally get in climbing. You know, I hang out with like a single dude in the mountains in tents a lot of the time. I'm not on stage 300 days a year, so it's fun to be here. Yeah.
Is there a soundtrack to that adventure? I mean, do climbers like music and listen to music and carry music with them when they go into nature?
Just the sound of hollow wind and rockfall, basically. No, I mean, we listen to music, of course. Yeah.
Hey, I was talking about your dad, mountain guide, bodybuilder, adventurer, fearless guy. And I'm just imagining growing up with a guy who was so huge. And I wonder if that was intimidating or inspiring for young Tommy Caldwell.
Both.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah, you could have both for sure. He's still a trip. To this day, he is a memorable person to just meet on the street.
Yeah. Right. And so he obviously shaped your young brain about having an awareness and an understanding of being in nature and being challenged, right? It was like obstacles are to be figured out rather than avoided?
Yeah, besides being a bodybuilder and a climber, he was also a middle school teacher. So he was always thinking about, how to make kids thrive in this world. And so I think I was pretty lucky to grow up with that as an example.
Yeah, it's also absolutely no place to hide. If he's a middle school teacher and a bodybuilder and a climber, he's got all of the things covered.
Yeah, absolutely.
A long time ago, maybe 25 years ago or more, I was able to interview Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia on eTown. Cool. And as I think about people who helped shape you and inspire and influence you and your path, I suspect Yvon Chouinard is on the list.
Yeah, I mean, he's right up at the top of the list. I've been an ambassador for Patagonia for, 15 years. So in a way, Yvon is my boss, although I don't spend a lot of time with him generally. Until this summer, actually, I rode my bike from here to Alaska and stopped at his summer house in Jackson for a few days and got to spend 3 extraordinary days just hanging out with Uncle Yvon and soaking up a little bit of his wisdom.
Yeah. I'm trying to imagine the difference between the climbing culture now and the climbing culture that he sort of encountered or created when he was starting out. Because for one thing, there were a lot fewer of them, and places were, in many cases, unexplored, right?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the climbs that I go do, a lot of the cliffs that I climb on, he and his friends climbed the first ascents. They were the first ones to explore these mountains, and so my generation is able to reinvent them, but we always look towards kind of that generation with a lot of admiration.
Yeah, and the fact that they were able to sort of size up the route, the pathway that would allow them to accomplish what they did.
Yeah, and that transcends climbing and now goes into trying to protect our home planet.
Yeah, so let's talk about that. Yvon obviously started an apparel company and a climbing gear company that is sort of imbued with a kind of sustainability and environmental ethos that has stayed true throughout all these years. And it isn't always an obvious connection, I guess. Being out in nature, being a climber, being an adventurer, doesn't necessarily translate to being an environmentalist.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Yvonne and for myself, it kind of does, because you can't help but fall in love with nature when you're in it in that intense and deep of a way all the time. And
Right.
so, weirdly, when we go to these remote places, we see the impact very acutely. We go back to the same places year after year after year, and we see how they're changing. And so you figure at some point that if you have a chance to make a difference, you will try.
You're talking about the impact of other climbers, the impact of climate change.
Climate change is the main impact that I
Yeah.
worry about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's impact from other climbers, but I think on a grand scale, I feel like that's pretty minimal.
Yeah. And so when you go to Washington to lobby, or when you go to different places to speak, what are you talking about? What are you advocating for? What are you defending?
I mean, generally, it's land protection issues these days. Like, if I hear of a threatened area that also has climbing, I just go. Like, I do a trip there. So this is a big part of my life these days. I plan these expeditions. I go to these remote places. I go to climb the mountains, but I also bring a bit of a film crew and tell stories and write articles and make movies about them. And so that's how we kind of raise this broader awareness. Because I think people don't really like to hear climate change stories. They're kind of a bummer, They're kind of
Right.
sad stories. So if you can mix it with this like adventure vibe, it makes it more fun, and then therefore a little more impactful for people to remember what is needed to be done to protect these places.
Yes. Yeah. I think there's fodder for the cactus blossoms, though, somewhere. Those bummer songs about beautiful places could create some bittersweet something. I don't know.
Yeah.
I do want to ask you, though, about celebrating the beauty of a place and helping people understand that it's threatened. What's the next step? Because I feel like there's been a lot of films about celebrating what's beautiful, and that we should do something. Are there organizations or websites or places where you suggest people participate in order to help preserve and protect the land that you celebrate?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm going to suggest one thing. It's to find something sort of local. And actually, Patagonia has this incredible tool called ActionWorks, where you could just go on their website, Patagonia ActionWorks, and type in your zip code, and it tells you about all the environmental nonprofits, which Patagonia supports, which is like most environmental nonprofits in your area. And then that gets you involved in that community. You can find out who they are. You can donate money. You can donate your expertise if you want. But more than that, it gives you a community of people that are trying to do good things.
Yeah, and it's local, which is important.
Yeah, I think local is the things local issues are going to be the things that you make the most impact on, and therefore stay the most motivated for.
Yeah. And then and yet there are also opportunities for policy changes and sweeping legislation that could protect millions of acres and such. So I imagine that's why you go to D.C. and hang out with senators and congresspeople.
Yeah, I mean, I never wanted to have anything to do with politics, that's for sure. But once you go a few times, you kind of understand that that's how the cake is sliced. And if you want to make an impact, you got to poke your head into that world on occasion.
Yeah.
So.
And so in your balance right now, you've got kids, you live in Estes Park, you're still climbing, you're celebrating places that are beautiful, you want to protect and preserve. How's it working out? How's the balance in your life working? Are you getting enough climbing in? And
I mean, I never get enough climbing in. I climb a ton, but I always want more.
Yeah.
But the balance is pretty good these days, honestly. Like, I do 1 or 2 big expeditions a year. I spend a tremendous amount of time. I figure out how to multitask. Like, I bring my kids on climbing trips to Europe with me, and I justify it by saying this is great education for them, but it's kind of just about me being able to go climbing and show them the world. And yeah, I mean, I don't know. Balance is that's a hard question. There's so much great opportunity these days that
was there a point in your career when your dad thought, "Whoa, I may be pushed a little too hard. This guy is insane. He's on a 3,000-foot sheer rock cliff for 19 days. I'm worried about him."
That exists always,
Yeah.
for sure. But he is the most embarrassingly proud father that you could ever have. I actually hate to be around him because, he just wants to tell my story to every stranger on the street.
And are you going to be that kind of a dad? Are your kids going to do stuff like that?
I don't know. I'm going to try and respect their boundaries maybe a little bit more than my father does.
Well, listen, I think it's an amazing. Thus far, it's just an unbelievable story that you've path you've chosen and success you've achieved. Hard fought. Unbelievably hard fought battles and lots of danger and risk. But it's great that you're now, harnessing that notoriety and that experience and channeling it into a direction that can actually be beneficial to not just, all of us now, but certainly your kids and their generation. It's important work. Patagonia, what's the web?
Action Works. Yeah.
PatagoniaActionWorks.org. What dot?
I don't actually know what dot it is.
Yeah. But if you just go to Patagonia and look for Action Works.
Yeah, it'll be there. And you're doing the same thing, trying to utilize music and things to bring awareness to other things as well. So it's great to be here with you.
Yeah, well, thanks, Tommy. Thanks so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Love learning about your story. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah.